Aku no Hana is one of my favorite anime, in no small part thanks to its superb first episode. Its methodical pacing ensures nothing short of a creeping sense that something isn't quite right with the protagonist Kasuga. This is soaked in through the directing of Hiroshi Nagahama, known best for his series director role throughout the entirety of Mushishi. During a lost episode of the podcast I do with my three friends, they felt like not much of anything happened in that first episode. And I can see where they're coming from. There aren't any big flashy events, no obvious cornerstone conflict to focus in on. Questions like who is the antagonist and what's the plot going to be are answered vaguely at best, which attributes to the unsettling nature of it all. The episode begins with several establishing shots of kids walking to school, eventually giving attention to Kasuga. All the while, we are meant to see the small town as any normal location. Kasuga is often looking down or off into the distance, as if totally disinterested with his surroundings, the conversations of his classmates, and really anything outside of his own internal thoughts. There's this really brilliant touch to how dialogue is conveyed. The majority of them bore Kasuga, and we don't just see this through body language. The color palette is muted, the cuts are slower, the voices of even the group he hangs around with sound like Ben Stein filtered through a dreamy soundscape. But then when something does catch his attention, for example to talk about what movies the group is interested in between horror and romance, Kasuga chimes in with an upbeat voice, remarking the two genres are kind of the same when you think about it. This goes over everyone else's heads, and we are given shots of the perspective of Kasuga, with the others looking like dumb, ugly, boorish troglodytes. Later on, there's another instance of this. The group is chatting about girls. Kasuga is once again unengaged. Then one of them makes a remark about the bush of a certain classmate, Nanako. The important thing we've learned about her by this point is Kasuga has a crush on Nanako. Awkward eye contact, a close-up of her legs in a tight gym uniform, perspective shots with her in bright coloring, smiling and looking flawless. He even calls her his muse and femme fatale, which, as we've been learning through Kasuga's book-drenched bedroom, and constant cuts to Baldier's fleurs de mal that he carries around with him, shows that for Kasuga to ascribe literary terms to anything means he cares deeply for it. So after the crass remark about Nanako's pubic situation, Kasuga tells the other boy to shut up and that saying such things about girls isn't nice. This gets him made fun of by his friends, and he eventually separates, saying he has to go get a book. In that brief moment where he was standing up for the girl he loves, he showed more life than the rest of the episode combined. My favorite scene, barring the closing, is the clever reuse of the opening of everyone walking to school. Typically this would be taboo in anime, but it's done with purpose. It shows the monotony of Kasuga's everyday life. That it's just one day after another of being apathetic towards almost everything. That the only two things that make him come alive are the literary world and Nanako. Then there is this slight deviation. Kasuga stops on the staircase outside, and with the most forlorn look, gazes off towards the sun. Then the crackling begins. A noise you'd expect from some Lovecraftian beast as it awakens for the first time in a millennia, bones crunching and ripping through dried, weakened flesh. This is the second time we've seen this otherworldly flower cut, and we aren't certain just what it is, just that something isn't right, that something in Kasuga's head is amiss. The episode slowly teases at what this could be, yet never directly stating it. Through his interaction with the group he hangs around with and his internal monologue, it's clear Kasuga sees himself as an intellectual. When arguing about getting a girlfriend, he states that he has a better chance because he reads books, therefore he's smarter than his friends. Meanwhile, the increasing length and veracity of the flower crackling cutaways suggests some sort of deteriorating mental state, usually appearing during extended existential thoughts, like when he's staring off into nowhere or that creepy ass ending, which I will get to in a minute. Something I brought up during that Lost podcast was the difference between the sexual content of Aku no Hana in the previous show I made my friends watch, Eromanga Sensei. A show like Eromanga sexualizes its characters for the sake of the viewer, while Aku no Hana does so for the good of the narrative. Those shots of girls adjusting tight gym shorts, taken from the perspective of the boys, specifically Kasuga, and focused on Nanako. It's letting the viewer know that there's a difference between the puppy love teen crush and the lecherous vibe Kasuga is giving off with his lusting for Nanako. It's a very honest portrayal of the fact that teen boys can be horny little shitheads in more than creepy fashions all too often. And so we come to the closing moments. Kasuga, realizing he had forgotten his book at school, returns to class. As he pulls it from his desk, he notices that Nanako has forgotten her gym bag at school with presumably her dirty gym clothes held within. What I can only describe as the terrifying voices of malicious children out of a horror flick begin to play in a sort of glitch music song, seeming as if this isn't just a backing soundtrack and that these are voices inside Kasuga's head emitting outwards. Then the flower returns, this time fully blooming and revealing at its center an eye befitting of a creature feature. Then cut to black. Episode is over, leaving the audience with a question of, what does that warped shitbag Kasuga do with his crush's sweaty gym uniform? As a fan of horror, as a fan of existential art about apathetic faux intellectual shitbags I can relate to in some fashion, as a fan of just weird shit in general, Aku no Hana is something I wish got more attention. It sure as hell deserves it. And yes, the rotoscoping isn't traditionally pretty, but I believe that's in service of reflecting the ugly nature of its characters. It's a shame we'll likely never get a conclusion to the anime. I know I could go read the manga, I intend to, but something will certainly feel lost without the superb direction of Hiroshi Nagahama. As always, like, subscribe, all that nonsense, it is very much appreciated. I do try to get out a video a week or so. Don't hold me to it, I'm not a professional, but it sure would be nice if you helped me get to that level.